Welcome to the IT Matters Podcast, where we explore why IT matters and matters pertaining to IT. Here's your host, Aaron Bock.
Welcome back to the IT Matters Podcast. Thanks for joining us today. We have a wonderful guest that I've known for a long time, Ron Horn. I'll let him introduce himself here in a little. Before we get started, I just want to apologize for my voice today. If it cracks about 3 or 4 times, I am dying from this pollen here in Charlotte, North Carolina today. So hopefully everyone else is not dealing with the same. But let's get started. So Ron, thanks for joining the show.
Glad to be here, Aaron. Been looking forward to this. And so like you, battling with all of these allergies and things going on, but I've been excited about the opportunity to be able to speak with you on this podcast.
Yeah, it's hard to get you on the schedule because I know you're in such high demand. So we're lucky to have you today. So I know you sent me a bio, if you will, but I don't like to read bios. So I'd rather just say, Ron, what should the listeners know about you and where you're at today and your career history, your personal history? What's about Ron Horn?
Yeah, so thanks, Aaron. About Ron Horn, well, I guess that depends on who you would ask and what time of day and what time of day you'd catch me. But typically, I'm probably known as a technologist. This is all I've ever done. I've been in technology. I've been fortunate, actually, to have been in technology my entire career. Been in a number of industries: healthcare, retail, manufacturing, federal government, even on the channel or consulting side. And most recently found myself in higher education.
You've really hit the whole gamut.
Well,
all the very fast-moving, innovational technology ones too. Healthcare, retail, education. Sometimes we're a little bit behind in those.
Yeah, I've been focused on finding my passion, if you will, in my career, looking for industries, and timing is everything, as you know, but looking for industries that at the time are dynamic and being innovative and are open to new ways of doing business, new ways of thinking about how to use technology. And so I've purposely tried to align myself with a lot of these businesses. Although if you look at my resume, it might look like this guy doesn't know what he wants to do. But it's one of those things where I've made it about me and what I wanted to do in my career and what I wanted to focus on, and then trying to, as I said earlier, align myself with those businesses who think along the same lines. And so sometimes the time I spend somewhere might be shorter one place than another. And that's just because of my career goals and kind of where I'm heading in my career.
So on this podcast, Ron, we talk about why IT matters and what are the IT matters. But you brought up, you've switched a lot in your career. I'm curious, for those listening, how did you get into IT? How did you become a technologist?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I don't know if it was by accident or by design. I was strong in science and math in high school. And I think, I like to tinker with things. I was raised in an environment where my father was a handyman. He worked in the industry out there and textiles and manufacturing, but he'd always liked to tinker. And I had the same things that I enjoyed doing. And so it led me into electronics. First and foremost, out of college at the University of Kentucky, I went into the Air Force and went right into electronics. And so I got introduced to crypto early on in my career, a different kind of crypto than what people look at today. This is from the intelligence side of the house, into electronics and electronic warfare. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. I liked fixing things. I liked getting a piece of equipment that was broken and the challenge that was facing me. I had to try to fix it and make it work like it did function as it was new out of the box. And so really enjoyed doing that. And so once again, even while I was in the Air Force, I got to do exactly what I love to do. So did I land? I probably landed in it. I was too young to realize what it was that I wanted to do, but my like or affinity for math and science kind of led me in that direction. So, but I loved it.
Yeah.
Never done anything else.
Well, thank you for your service, first off.
Absolutely.
That's an important duty to serve our country. So thank you for that. Second, I feel that it's not uncommon to find someone like you who has started in a military position of some sort, in one of the branches, communications, intel, etc., and then they end up in what we would call corporate or organizational IT. Why do you think that is? Is it natural progression? Or?
I don't think so. I think it's timing, once again, is everything, depending on when you're separating service and your time and what industry demands that are out there. Today, it just happens to be cybersecurity and intelligence, or intelligence gathering. And so people who are in those types of careers in the military seem to have a lot more opportunity, if you will, today in the skill sets that are available today, made available to service people today, than what they were 30 years ago when I left. It was a lot of trades. A lot of people were leaving the service in the trades, in welding and carpentry and construction and electricity and HVAC. A lot of military people actually ended up in those careers, transportation, logistics, and those types of careers. But that's kind of where the industry was at the time, except maybe for those who had specialty training. So for those who were in the intelligence career fields or the electronics or electronic warfare career fields, there was opportunities for them with defense contractors, the Raytheons, the whomever, Northrop Grumman, whomever. There was a lot of opportunity for those folks. Even when I left, those same companies were around and had opportunities for people with those backgrounds. So I don't know that it was a natural progression. You kind of mentioned a second ago, people maybe gravitating back towards where they were, what they did while they were in the military. I think that's passion driving them. Life hands us all types of situations and circumstances for us to make decisions about our lives and our careers and where we're going to go and what we're going to do, right? And depending upon your own personal circumstances might determine that decision-making process and where you might end up. And it might be somewhere where you hadn't planned on going, or a career field that you hadn't planned on entering into. But I think if you have the opportunity to make a choice, to choose where you want to go, I think you will gravitate towards that passion. And if it just happened to be something that you were doing while you were in the military, that's where you might end up. Like I said, fortunately for me, I've always had that, technology has always been a place where I found opportunity throughout my entire career at different levels and in different industries. But basically, it was the same thing just through the evolving of technology. And I was fortunate enough to be able to keep up with it throughout my career. So,
and I think that's one of the coolest things about technology or IT. You meet people all different ages, all different backgrounds, all different skill sets. Like you said, it's timing and it's passion. And sometimes we don't find our passions until midway through life. And so it's not uncommon in IT for us to find someone that said, yeah, I was in accounting and I became an IT person by accident or on purpose. Or, someone who's on the engineering or operations side go into IT because they see that's more opportunity and they find more passion there. So I think that's something really cool, is that there's not a single career path like an accounting major. You always start at the bottom, you work your way up, and you become a partner, and then you go. It's pretty scripted. Same with investment banking and things like that. But IT is not.
No, it is not. I will remember the words of a very good friend of mine several years ago. He and I worked together when I left the military and then went to work for the federal government for a number of years also. When I left the federal government and I went to a small private computer firm at the time, computer/imaging company at the time. I was on the computer side of the house. He was on the imaging side of the house as a developer, and we just became friends. Ultimately, the computer side of the house closed, and I was pulled over into the imaging side of the house, and then we ended up working together, being on the road together, selling imaging solutions. And we just became friends. Subsequently, he left the company, started his own company, a lot like you. And we stayed friends. We played ball together, played golf together. Life took us in different directions. I've been one to pick up and just go and move. And I moved all over the country. He kind of stayed around the same area in Kentucky. But he said to me a number of years ago, because there was a point in my life where I was questioning my career choices. He said, Ron, you love what you do and you're good at what you do and you're very passionate about it. And he said, don't ever lose that. But he says, if you can find the why, and I think I've even heard you say this before, struck a note with me, but he just said to me over the phone that day, he said, if you can find the why, you'll find the what. And I was thinking, oh, that's so rudimentary, but you know what? But it's true.
It's true. You're right.
It's so basic, fundamentally. It's so basic.
We all owe your friend something for starting those words.
Yeah, I would never tell him he was genius for saying that, but
we'll keep this quiet.
Right.
We only put this out to like 5 different streams. It's
right.
Okay, maybe.
But he was right. Maybe. He was right. Yeah. And that changed things for me because I started really thinking about, at that point, really thinking about my career moves. More so than what I did earlier in my career. And I started, when I would have conversations with companies and organizations prior to becoming an employee or a team member, I would ask the questions that were important to me. What are your goals for the company? Mm-hmm. You know, what's the vision? What's the thought of the leadership team around innovation? Where you're going? What's your strategic plan look like? I would have them share those things with me. And if they couldn't or they didn't know, and it was just a natural process of elimination for me, good, bad, or indifferent, they may have ended up doing really well. But for me at the time, those were the things that I was basing my decisions on.
So I'm going to jump a little bit because you just brought up an interesting kind of transition. But on this podcast, we talk about information technology, why it matters, misconceptions, things like that. You're currently a CIO of a community college here in North Carolina, and you've been in IT decision-making roles for a long time. And I think that's not by accident because you asked the why. And so I always ask guests on the show, what do you think IT or information technology means in an organization? And then the follow-up is, do you think it's hard to communicate for a lot of IT folks, I guess, between the business and IT and really understand the business use case? And do you think that's a unique skill set? It's a loaded question.
Yes, it is. So my thoughts on the first part of your question is, I don't mean to sound crass, but I'm just trying to be transparent.
Yeah.
I don't care what the business thinks about IT when I step into an organization. My goal is to change that because 90% of the time I have to.
Right, that's your job.
Let's just be honest. 90% of the time I have to. 90% of the roles that I've stepped into, IT was looked at as a cost center, mostly overhead. Right? We have all these people doing a number of different jobs. We know that we need IT is a necessity for us to be able to function, operate, be competitive in our business today. But how much of that is really necessary? That one's really easy for me to answer. And I don't mean to be so short about the answer, but I'm just saying I'm changing the way that they think. How do I do that? My goal in while stepping into these organizations, and this was something that I learned from another mentor early on in my career before I got my first CIO role. This gentleman, when I was with a large academic medical center, had pulled me aside, asked me if I was interested in being in the CIO program, and was going to send me to a CIO boot camp where subsequently I could get certification as a certified healthcare CIO. And I said, absolutely, that's my goal anyway. And he believed in me and took the time to mentor me. And one of the things that he said a lot of things that made sense and really helped me out in my career. But one of the things that really stuck with me, he says, don't forget to socialize the accomplishments of your team. Far too many times in my career, his career, he was talking about, far too many times I've been in organizations where it was just expected and they really didn't know how IT contributed to the success of the business. And so he said, your job is to make sure that they understand that on a frequent basis. And so, second part of your question, my answer is I work really hard to socialize the accomplishments of my team, of all of my teams. And, at Guilford Tech, where I'm at today, one of the first things that I did is once we completed our first, I guess it was probably eight or 9 months after I'd been on board with the college, we put together an IT annual report. And it was 18 pages of what we did as an IT organization or an IT group for the college at the time, every major project that we had completed, and then any IT related projects that we had completed to support the infrastructure of the organization and the business operations. I did another one last year that was 20 pages. A couple more pages, and this one will probably be 25 pages. Even through the pandemic, I was recording things that we had done for the organization. And so a lot of what will be published in that annual review will be the accomplishments that the team had made prior to, during, and post-COVID. Yeah, whatever that's defined as. And then to also not leave out what the team accomplished during our cyber attack or our cyber incident. And so that's been my focus, is socializing the accomplishments of the team, what it is that they're doing, and to create more leaders. I've said openly to my team, I don't want to be the expert in the room. I should not be the expert in the room. That's why you're here. We're here to support one another, but you're the expert in cybersecurity or infrastructure or service delivery or application support or networking, unified communications, whatever it is. I'm here to support you as a leader, and I'm here to create more leaders. And so these are the things that I've focused on in my career. Yes, administratively, I have a lot of duties. There are a lot of things that I have to do. I have to attend a lot of meetings, attend conferences, sit on panels, things like that. But they're not, to what elevate me, my position in the company is, but it's to create an awareness, whether it's around the technology or around the people that work with me.
I really like the report, the annual report. Do you think that it has helped not only morale on your team, but the business of the college or the medical institution or medical college you were working at? Do you think this has helped the business understand IT too, and come to you and say, wow, I didn't actually know that was such a big project?
Absolutely. 110%. I don't think that, and I can't take all the credit for it because it's an idea that was, implanted in me years ago.
But I do think it's a good idea that for others listening who may be in IT trying to figure out management, it's a great idea for them to take and adopt.
Yeah, absolutely. I would not change a thing about that. The rest of the senior leadership team, along with me at the college, has come to expect that Ron's going to come to the table talking about something that IT's done or doing. And I do it on at least once a month. So I never miss a month, whether it might be as small as reporting our fishing, our monthly fishing report and the number of clicks that we had and our click rate and how it compares to the industry standard, where we are from that perspective. It might be just that in 1 month, but it's also talking about new programs, new projects, new implementations, new people coming on board. Every opportunity that I get to socialize, not only to the senior leadership team, I'm also on the President's Council, so I also do it there. At least 1 or 2 times a year, I get to go before the board and do the same thing and create an awareness there. What it is that we're doing to formulate an opinion, I guess, if you will, that, hey, IT is contributing to the organization. Now we're really seeing the fruits of their labor and what it is their organization or how the organization is benefiting from that. So yes, to your question, I would recommend it to anyone 100%. Socialize all the accomplishments that your team, even if it's very, very little information at least just do it so that it creates an awareness.
It's hard for people to have a team right now with how tough it is to hire.
Oh my gosh.
I do really like that idea. And for anyone listening, I think this is a great tidbit to adopt from this interview. You have been in a lot of organizations across a lot of different industries, as you mentioned. Organization you feel have done IT well or are doing IT well, whether that's organizational IT, operational IT, or the whole thing. What are they doing that makes them different than other organizations? And I'm asking this, not saying it's just IT. It could be the whole business.
Yeah, no. You're right. I think that's probably, in a broader sense, another way to look at it. It's not just IT. I think collectively as a business, look, COVID has rocked our worlds, right? And now with the economy changing, it's all changing. And survival and the competitive landscape is constantly changing. The organization, and this is not new, but it's just true. The organizations that can maintain being nimble and pivoting, and which always makes me think of that Friends episode where they're carrying the couch up the stairs and he keeps saying pivot, but organizations that can pivot, not on a dime, because no organization can move that quickly, but you have to be able to adjust quickly, and you got to be in tune and in touch with what is going on. You can't sit in your shell, your box, your office, and focus on what you think your objective might be, because I think then you lose sight of what the customer needs and what the customer wants, because those change too. Whether it's use COVID as an example, or use the economy as an example, as where we are today. Look at how the customer's needs are changing. When COVID came along, it was remote capability and increasing the collaborative efforts, unified communications efforts of every company, right? You're sending everybody home or, remote to work remotely. How did you adjust to that? How did you continue to do operations? And if you think fundamentally back to your disaster recovery plans as a company in business continuity, what do? You drop the electronics, you drop the technology, you can go back to paper. Well, similarly, only more advanced now, in COVID, you had to do the same thing. You're putting technology in the hands of those who can do work operationally for you as an organization to allow you to continue your operations and to maintain your competitiveness at whatever level it is at that point. People are adjusting, so everybody really didn't know at the time what the results were going to be and what the landscape was going to look like once the doors were reopened again, right? And so being able to adjust to those changing environments, I think, is what's going to make those companies who can pivot and change quickly, they're the ones that are going to lead the pack. It's not necessarily any industry. I think those who lead, whether it's healthcare, whether it's higher education, whether it's manufacturing, logistics, supply chain, whatever it is, the ones that succeed are going to be the ones that are in touch with what is going on. So it's eyes wide open. It's having ear to the wall and listening. Get out and talk, have phone calls, have conference calls, send emails, but stay in contact with the people that are out there to try to find out what's going on in the business and what's changing. Take those extra steps to dig a little deeper. Pick up the phone, call the customer. Whether it's, if you're a reseller, call some of your customers, the biggest customers that are out there. Hey, what's going on in your industry? What are you seeing? In my case, it's students. We serve students. Hey, what's going on? What are you seeing? What do you like? What don't you like? Do you like the remote learning environment that you're in today? If you do, what do you like about it? If you don't, what don't you like about it? How can we, I think this is the key, right? Regardless of the industry, how can we deliver a product to you that you're going to be satisfied with, not only today, but at least in the near future, because times could change again.
Yeah.
So I think that's the key.
I would add, we see a lot of different customer situations here at Opcala. I would say the feedback loop the continuous feedback loop, every good organization that does IT well always has a continuous feedback loop to their internal customers, to their external customers, internally, the stakeholders. The other thing is, and I'm not saying always, but when people view IT or projects as like this big project, we got to get it done and then we're done. It's never done. It's always changing.
Yeah.
So those that are always making incremental tweaks and changes and tests and fails and keep working at it, they seem to be more reliant and they're more resilient. And we saw that during COVID. So I agree with you 100%. I want to ask you a question. You brought up students. They're your main stakeholders. So I'm going to kind of take that a little bit now that you're at a community college. Community colleges are right now in the news. If you follow it, they're being targeted by cyber incidents. That's a huge trend. I think everyone, you don't even have to be in IT to know that. But for you, what do you think is a trend in IT, especially in education, that people need to pay attention to? That'll be the first part, and then I'll follow up with another.
Okay. No, that's a great and very common question. It's what we who are involved in cybersecurity go to sleep thinking about every night and wake up thinking about it every morning. I was asked in a panel, how much of your time, not too long ago, how much of your time do you spend on cybersecurity as a CIO? I said, I spend well over 50% of my time in cybersecurity related tasks because the job requires it. The most leading thing for me in conveying to our stakeholders, students, is do whatever you can to protect your data. If that means implementing other levels of security, whether it's multi-factor authentication, whatever that level of authentication, continue to do that and continue to evolve with that technology. The attack vectors are just, it's crazy. Right now, they're coming from everywhere and they're relentless. It's nonstop. As you said, you could just look at the news feeds on a daily basis as somebody's getting compromised. And so from one reason or another, patching is a big thing. Make sure your patches are up to date. Not only your regularly scheduled patching, but your emergency patches or the 0-day patches that come out. Making sure you're sure that you're up to date on those. That's just organizationally. Make sure backups are updated, current, and have been tested. So get that disaster recovery plan out, knock the dust off of it, update it however it needs to be updated, and flip the switch and make it happen and test it on a regular basis. Our students carry around mobile devices with them all the time. And that's the way of communicating with them on a daily basis. They're leaning more towards trying to do everything from their mobile device. You know, it used to be, it's so crazy to even say this now. I'm talking like this because I've definitely seen computers evolve over my career. But it used to be, everybody's carrying around a laptop, right? Now it's everybody's carrying around a cell phone. They're not carrying around laptops anymore. It was laptops to iPads or tablets, now to cell phones. And the students, by and large, a number of our students want to be able to conduct business, which would mean filling out the financial aid forms, doing registration, selecting their classes, attending class, receive their grades, correspond with their instructors, all online, but also on a cell phone. And because here's the key. For us in our industry, it's being where they are, right? So wherever that student is, Starbucks, Burger King, McDonald's, wherever, this was no endorsement, but whatever retail location they are or wherever they are, deliver that content to them at that destination. And I think that's key. We as an organization have to be able to deliver that content to the students no matter where they are, because now, although we're a community college and we compete with other community colleges and four-year colleges and virtual colleges, the borders have been removed, right? So students can choose to go anywhere they want. to answer the last part of your question, what makes you stand out? It's that ability to be able to understand the needs of the student, no matter where they are, and meet those needs. And that only comes through constant communication with them in how they're doing, how well they're succeeding, how well you're paying attention to their needs and how they're progressing or not. And if your content delivered is relevant and current, because now it's more of a, students are coming in, what kind of job am I going to get when I graduate? Back when I was going to school, and it may have just been the crowd I hung around with, it was probably the wrong crowd, but we didn't think about what we were going to do when we were going to graduate. We were just thinking about getting through college, right? Graduating and getting through college. And so maybe I should have hung around with a different crowd, but
yeah, possibly.
but it seems more evident now, and it's probably because I'm more mature now than I was then, that students are focused on where they're going and what it is they're going to do, and how that education that we deliver can make a difference in their lives. So what kind of job am I going to get? Where am I going to go to work? They're thinking about those things a lot earlier now, it seems.
Yeah. And if you go back and relate to what you said before, you're saying, okay, well, students are going mobile. So classes are going mobile, teachers are going mobile, content is going mobile, finance is going mobile. That's a lot of changes to the historical and traditional college approach. So to your point, if you're not constantly making changes when we are all mobile, and that's the new way of doing education, not making a prediction, but it could be, you're going to be behind as an organization if you're not doing those things.
You are. I think, and let's not forget about, but there are some students that just don't learn as well in an online environment.
Sure.
That they need the classroom instruction. I think that as a school, as a business, you have to make the decision as to whether or not you're going to continue to do that. Either you're going to be all online, deliver everything online, or not, or hybrid. You know, we're there to serve the public. We're public servants. I think that for community colleges, at least right now, well, in regular four-year colleges, that's going to be the way that we're going to continue to do business for some time. But I think there's going to be a gradual shift, that there's going to be more and more that are going to want to complete their degree, whatever it is, online, because the students are getting introduced to the technology as babies. And so that's all they ever grew up with, right? Yeah. And so it's content delivery for them since they were a baby in diapers.
Yeah.
And so that, as they get older, is just going to continue to evolve. And I think that method of content delivery is just going to continue to grow.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think it's going to only become more creative, and that trend is going to continue, and it'll be interesting to see how schools adapt around the country. There goes my voice again. So I know that I only blocked you for a certain amount of time, and I want to be respectful. So I want to ask this final question that I ask of all of the guests that come on the IT Matters podcast. So Ron, you are speaking in front of 1 million people. It's your State of the Union, and you are giving advice, IT advice, to those who are going to go into IT, they're not in IT. What do you want to tell them about why IT matters?
I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. What we talked about earlier is find your passion. The sooner that you can find your passion, I think the happier and the more fulfilled you'll be as a person. If opportunity presents itself and you have the opportunity to make the choice, then chase your passion. You as an individual are going to be able to deliver so much more once you do. I think that once a person finds their passion, it's going to open up a level of creativity in your mind that's going to be endless. And it doesn't matter the age. It doesn't matter, whether you're male, female, it doesn't matter. Once you do that, it's the ideas are just going to keep flowing. And that creativity is going to come alive. That's what keeps me going on a daily basis. I think the second day And this is, honestly, I'm not saying this because we're doing the podcast and because you're a friend of mine, but it makes me think about you when I say this is approach every day with vigor. I know some days it's tough, and I know some days it's hard, and we all don't have good days, and that's okay. That's life, I guess. At least I choose to accept it for that and what it is. But approach every day with vigor. Approach every day with a purpose. You don't have to have a laid out plan every single day of what it is you're going to do every day of your life. To me, that's boring. To others, they love it. To me, it's boring. But approach every day with vigor, with eyes wide open, with ears wide open. We have two ears and one mouth for a reason. And so I'll just let everybody in the audience figure that one out. Those million people that's out there, figure that one out. And the last thing that I would say that kind of relates to the last statement is be curious. Always take advantage of those opportunities to learn. Read a lot. Take the time to read. Take the time to venture out into other areas and be curious. Go out and search for materials about, say, if you don't know the answers to something, do the research, find out about it, educate yourself, even if it's on those fundamental things. And I do it myself sometimes, looking at, fundamental classes on Azure or AWS or blockchain or whatever it is. It's a good review, but it also allows me to stay grounded in understanding why I do what I do. And then look at those new areas as well. Be curious about blockchain, or autonomous vehicles or 3D printing, those types of things. There's a ton of industries that are out there that are just waiting for experts to come along. And who knows, you may find your passion through being curious and doing some research. It may be something that you might open some new doors for you and allow you to learn a new skill. And it might just allow you to be more passionate about what it is that you do on a daily basis.
That is not only IT advice, but life advice from you, Mr. Ron Horn.
Thank you.
Well, we appreciate you joining the IT Matters podcast. I know that the guests will enjoy this episode. Thank you all out there for listening. Hope you guys have an awesome week. And Ron, thanks for being on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you. I've enjoyed it, Aaron.
Yep. Thank you. We'll catch everyone soon.
Thanks for listening. The IT Matters podcast is produced by Apkalla, an IT advisory firm that helps businesses navigate the vast and complex IT marketplace. Learn more about Apkalla at opkalla.com.